Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Crunching Your Growth. I'm your host, Phil Masiello, and today's guest is a unique guy. His name is Britton Upchurch. I'm not going to give you too much of his background. I'll just give you a little bit. He worked in the advertising side, but mostly on the content generation side, and then he realized the power of AI and how people were not optimizing their listings on the Amazon world. So he founded a company called Perci AI, left the corporate world to do a startup, which obviously we love, and he's exploring the rapidly evolving world of AI, agents, what it actually takes to launch an AI startup when the ground is shifting under everybody's feet. So we're going to hear his whole story about how he bootstrapped this, how he started. And again, you've heard me say it before. We've had a couple of people on the show before talking about AI, and AI is changing so rapidly. So it's interesting to hear everybody's perspective on it. And I think Britton has a unique perspective on it. He's going to break down the foundational principles of AI, the real constraints shaping AI systems today, and why the next few years will fundamentally change how teams build, automate, and scale workflows. So we're going to dig into where AI is genuinely delivering value right now, which is important because there's a bunch of products out there, and you guys have seen it, where it's just sort of vaporware. People that did nothing before, have no expertise in it, and all of a sudden decided that they're in the AI business. And also where it falls short, how businesses should think about adoption without getting lost in the noise. But we're also going to cover why he launched Perci to help marketers write Amazon listings, some of the pitfalls he faced, how he bootstrapped this, and we're also going to get into AI a little bit on why agent reliability is the core challenge for the next wave of AI tools and the technical patterns Percy uses to orchestrate automations, how agents will sort of reshape roles, workflows, decision making, and then some practical AI fundamentals without the hype. So, whether you're an engineer, SEO, marketing leader trying to make sense of the agentic future, Britton brings a really practical, high signal perspective to what's coming and what to do. So let's bring him in and let's get to understand his startup, what he did, why he did it. And again, he's got a unique background, and I think you'll find it interesting. At least I do. And Britton, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time. And why don't you tell us your story? Let's sort of go back to the beginning, what you did before, how you got here, and we'll go from
Sure.
there.
Yeah, happy to be here, Phil.
Sure.
Let's see. The high level is I used to be in the corporate world. I was an advertising copywriter, so I worked in ad agencies and in some consulting companies too. And then let's see, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, left that to do Percy to do AI full time. But that wasn't just an immediate jump. There was a lot of groundwork that went before that, and now here we are. AI's on the tip of everyone's tongue, and it's sort of only beginning in a lot of ways still.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that there's, we're at really a precipice when I see it, because, we've been using AI in our business for about 6 or 7 years, and I think everybody starts focusing on LLMs when they start talking about AI. But the first place that we started using it was in data analytics, because if you think about what we do on the advertising side, we've got all this data from ads that we run. And if you take over a new client, they've run ads, they've had millions of people running ads, and they've got history. And it's really difficult to look at that history manually through spreadsheets or whatever. And the first place we used it was in data analytics, pulling all that disparate data in multiple spreadsheets. And it's, in my opinion, that's where it's truly amazing, because in about 20 minutes, it gave us a really good perspective on what had happened. So, but let's get back to what you were doing, because you were a copywriter, and then you made the leap to Percy, which was helping Amazon brands write listings,
Yep.
which I think is important, because I think people don't understand the power of their listings and why they should spend time writing them. And being a copywriter, I think you have a good, unique perspective, because that's sort of what the role is.
Yeah, yeah. I, I think I think most people that we talk to on Amazon, they know that their listing is important somehow. I mean, it's basically your storefront. and your and organic growth and all that. So I think they know that they need to have nice images. They need to have some copy that's well written. A lot of them don't know the first thing about SEO optimization. What's a keyword? What does that mean? Or even conversion signals and Amazon best practices. I mean, you have folks who are not very Amazon expert. Maybe they
Right.
have 15 other marketplaces they sell on too. So they just don't really have the time or ability to become an expert. Or you even have teams that are um, top Amazon professionals who've been doing this for 15 years, but they just have so many listings that they don't have the time to do it. I mean, we know what needs to be done. We just cannot pull enough resources to do it across our whole catalog. There's a bunch of revenue that's sort of sitting there on the floor that we can't get because
Sure.
we have thousands of listings across 10 different markets in 10 different languages. And that's a classic case where AI can come in and fix that problem for you.
Yeah. So you let me just recap a little bit. You were a copywriter for marketing firms, but you saw this gap, and then you decided that you were going to teach yourself AI and figure out how to get this done.
In a really short way, yes, there's a bit of a longer story, and maybe this is interesting to the listeners on the show. I remember being in my first copywriting job. Actually, this is going back even 10 years ago or so. Um, this is pre ChatGPT. This is pre transformer architecture. Like AI had not really become anything to the general public yet.
Sure.
Um, and I came across a this now it was a seminal essay um, called "The Unreasonable Effectiveness of RNNs," and this was RNNs were the earlier breakthrough architecture for language generation, and I saw that, and there was even a little sand pit where you could play with it and program your own language model, and I just had this sense of this is going to change everything about the job that I'm doing now. And then there was a long sequence of steps of testing it and thinking about what could it reasonably do at the time, what might it be doing in the future, and eventually lots of customer interviews and lots of experimentation to get to, hey, here's an Amazon catalog agent that will do all of this for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is interesting, and that's sort of the light bulb moment that people go through when they're going to start up something, right? Something clicks in their head that says, "There's a business here. I just have to put it together." Um,
Yeah.
and, we've been selling on, or we started selling on Amazon in 2006. I mean, now we do it for other people, but we started out doing our own brands and brand building. We're not sellers; we're brand builders, but.
Mhm.
It's so important, and it's gotten more and more important with the advent of Cosmo and Rufus, to make sure that you're telling the story of of your product with words and images. And even the A+ pages have sort of changed, right? People used to put up just generic brand A+ pages, but now you want to put your A+ pages to be specific to that particular product.
Yeah.
So
Don't forget structured data.
yeah.
The backend attributes are
Oh
are
yeah.
they were important already, but they're going to be way more important in the
Oh,
future.
absolutely. Yeah, we have we had which we shared a couple of weeks ago, were some of the key back end attributes, because Amazon, they never make it easy, but they published this paper on what was important in Cosmo, which is the algorithm, and Rufus is the answer engine. And it was just so distorted and so difficult to understand for the layman. But there was this woman, I can't remember her name now, um, and she broke it down for everybody. And she was on one of the podcasts that I was on with her, and she provided this image of what she got out of it, and she was 100% right. So you're 100% right. The structured data on the back end is extremely important. But the other thing that we found that's important, and you alluded to it before, is that people maybe selling on 10 different marketplaces with their product, and plus they're selling on their e-commerce site. And the one thing that we learned with Rufus is Rufus, when it's looking for the answer for a query, is actually looking at all these other sites, including your website. And so we've been definitely focused on making sure that it all matches, has the same language across all platforms so that it builds the credibility to it.
Mm. Yeah, that's a whole. I mean, optimizing on Amazon's own marketplace is one beast, and then the Rufus is one LLM, OpenAI, Google Gemini, or others, and how to optimize to appear correctly on the LLMs is a whole new field that's just emerging now. Some people call it ACO.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and that's in the last 3 or 4 months, this has suddenly coalesced as a new opportunity or a new field of battle, so to speak, for brands who want to show up, where the shoppers are. Um, it's exciting.
It is exciting. It's exciting, but it's also, in our opinion, it's sort of opened up the floodgates to this breed of people who think that they can just do, AI SEO, that don't really understand it, don't know anything about it, and they just all of a sudden are out there pitching it, and it winds up damaging, because then when you have legitimate companies out there that do have a process that can do it, it becomes, everybody questions it because they hired some guy who didn't really do it correctly.
Yeah, there's definitely. If you look back to the early days of even SEO, and people were doing,
Sure.
there were all kinds of black hat things that you could do. You could put the same search term repeated a million times in white text on a
Yeah.
white background, all that sort of stuff. And of course, those rules were created to combat the easy abuses that were available. But at the time, they weren't abuses. They were just optimizing for the system as it worked at the time.
Sure.
And so there is this process even now of trying to read the tea leaves a bit and take a guess at what are LLMs going to favor over the long term. What are they going to punish? What might they reward you for now, but it might bite you in the butt later if you do it. So if you're spamming just lots of unhelpful websites that all say the same thing over again in slightly different language, like that may work in a short term, but is it going to hurt you later? Maybe it won't matter. There is, I think we're in this Wild West period right now with LLMs where no one's quite figured out what's good or bad or even white hat or black hat necessarily. But that stuff will come. It's SEO quickly became organized around some best practices, and I think we'll probably see some shifting of sand, and we'll just see what's the gold in the pan left.
Yeah, I think, again, going back to Amazon, I think what we learned from Rufus, from optimizing for Rufus, has really helped us in optimizing for websites over the last 6 or 7 months, because it sort of laid out exactly what, because Rufus is essentially an LLM, and so
Mhm.
it laid out exactly what it was looking for, and so we've been able to use that. But what's the big difference, and I think ChatGPT has just sort of started this, is when we have Google, you've got Google Search Console, you've got Google, your store, your business profile, you've got your ads, you've got the merchant center, you've got all these things that sort of you attach them all to your website, and that sort of tells Google who you are and what you're doing. And we don't really have that with AI right now. It's sort of, you have to force it in there. But I
Mm.
think that OpenAI just did something with Shopify about a few months ago, where they've created this app, because what they want to start doing, A, is advertising, and B, obviously pick up the advertising revenue, and B, the ability to pay on search. So I
Mm.
think
Check
that
out.
you're 100% right. It's coming. So things will start getting clearer, and there'll be structure around it. But let's get back to Percy. So
Yep.
you started it, but you obviously started it with nothing, right? You really didn't have any clients, right? When you first started it.
No clients, no real money. I was working a full time job, 9 to 5, or it's advertising, so 9 to 10 or 11 sometimes. And even at the beginning, the idea wasn't even all that solid. I mean, there was an idea I had, but the first part was figuring out, is this even the right product to build? Am I even talking to the right person, or suggesting the right thing? My first idea, because I was in advertising agencies, and when you're a copywriter in an ad agency, the real grunt work is social media posts.
Oh yeah.
So you have to put together a a calendar of, okay, we need full Facebook and Instagram posts for the months of September, October, and November for this campaign. You need to come up with 10 a month or something, and you sit there, and what holidays are around. It's this awful thing. So the first idea I had was,
It's this
I'm
awful
going to
thing.
use AI to automate social media posts.
Right.
Wow, what a great idea! Everyone's going to love this. I'm going to be a billionaire.
Yeah.
Um, and I went to, I think I was in Australia at the time, and I a friend of mine worked uh, in a marketing department of a huge company there. That they were a global commerce company, and I remember pitching this guy. I had it was a customer interview. I had learned about those from this great book, um, and I asked, as you do with a customer interview, you don't lead with your product. You ask them open ended questions. What kind of problems do you have? What's your day look like? All this stuff. And at no point did social media or Facebook ever come up in his interview. And then I showed him the solution, and he said, "Oh, this is cool. Who's going to say the terrible idea, Britton? Oh, this is great, man. That well done. Pat on the back. You're doing great." And then the last question of this interview from this book that I had learned was, if you could use this technology for something else, what would you use it for? And he said, "Man, I've got this team in the Philippines. There's 15 of them, and they write catalog copy for our online catalog. It is the worst. I have to manage them all. If this could write catalog copy, I would buy it tomorrow. And I'm not that smart." I had to hear that 4 more times from other people before it finally clicked. Oh, I've been I've been trying to do the wrong thing. I should do this instead. This is way better. And that same process just happened over and over. And that was, everyone was a pivot. Maybe it's a different solution that I'm doing. Maybe I'm talking to the wrong person. But that was a really long process of trying to narrow down to the exact pain that was the most acute. And yeah, that was a really helpful thing for me early on.
Yeah. So, but you were still working in advertising when you were doing all that.
Still working in advertising. I think one thing that I meet a lot of folks even now, I travel all over the world, and I meet people who are consultants, or they have a full-time job, and they have this idea of, oh man, I would love to build my own thing. I just can't. I feel trapped in, I have this full-time job, and maybe I have bills or whatever it is. It's a hard, and I sympathize. That's a really hard position. It's not like you have 8 hours a day extra to go build something or work on something. For me, it was a nights and weekends kind of catch as I can as I was getting it started, and then the more and more I built it, and the more excited I got. The thing that really helped in the end was I went part time at my job. So this is often what I tell people if they have a full time job and they feel trapped. It's like, well, what if you could go down to 4 days a week? Often if you have a full time job, that's not that hard to negotiate. Hey, pay me for 4 days. I'll do 4 days of work. Even Steven, everyone's happy. And then you've got an extra day in your week that you can spend working on your business idea, prototyping up the MVP, whatever it is. Yeah, and eventually, just small steps, one bit at a time. More and more of your life is spent on this thing, and maybe you can start to see a bit of revenue, get one customer in the door. Like, that's a huge step, and before you know it, you'll quit your job.
Yeah.
I
Well, a
mean,
lot of
it's not
people
very
go,
easy. It's not easy or quick.
no, it's not easy or quick. And one of the biggest obstacles is taking that step. There's a lot of people that, will say, I have this idea, I want to do it, I want to do it. But at the end of the day, that fear factor is one of the things that's really difficult for people to overcome, because, and then what happens is they do take that step and they hit that first obstacle. And because everybody's going to hit an obstacle, right? Everybody's got to
Mhm.
pivot. Everybody's got to hit an obstacle. And then they totally say, well, okay, well, this was a mistake. I got to go back to work. I can't do this. And then they wind up ditching their idea and going back to work, which is the worst thing to do. But I tell entrepreneurs all the time, I don't care how old you are, I don't care what, you take that leap. But what's the worst thing that happens? You go out and you give it your all. And if it fails, it fails. You lose money. You're not going to die. You're always going to have a place to live. You're always going to be able to eat. I'm sure you have family. So you can't give up on that first obstacle when you hit the first wall,
Mhm.
which always happens. I've not seen anyone start a business that didn't hit an obstacle that thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done this,
Yeah.
including myself.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that helped me was that by the time I was getting to the point of doing a full, okay, we're going to jump off the boat and do this full time, there were already customers. I had already overcome a lot of the first hurdles that you tend to hit. Um, the model was working, the product was working. We had traffic and signups, and that all that was was being accomplished while I was still working. So I think there is a wide gap where you can keep your security going in some form or fashion. Maybe if you're a full-time person, if you can't go part-time, become a freelancer, become a contractor, and see if you can put together part-time, consistent work that way. Um, and then you can start to like you don't have to give up all of your salary before you try and get your first dollar sold. You can start to sell your product or to whatever that success looks like. You can start to have that success already in hand by the time that you've made the leap, which I think can really be a safer way to do it, or just a more reliable way to do it. But at the same time, as you say, every step of building a business, you come into you turn a corner and there's a big boulder in the path, and you have no idea what you're supposed to do. It's like, well, is this it? Maybe, I don't know. Let's try and just see what happens. It's not. I don't think. I think sometimes there's so many stories that get told online of effortless businesses that are founded, and in 20 minutes they're worth $2 bajillion, and wow, wasn't that easy? And the reality is, I think it's just always hard. There's always more. There's product market fit can be a downhill, but then there's just different problems that you're facing. So it's never like you're gonna just sit around and bask in glory.
Well, I'll tell you exactly why I started to do this show. And I've been doing this is the fifth year we're doing it. I mentor at the University of Maryland School of Entrepreneurship. I do it at University of Baltimore and incubators, accelerators. I love the startup community. I love the energy. But all these guys, I started to notice that same thing. All these guys were paying attention to these YouTube channels where people were like, I started this business. My first year, I made $10,000 a month, and which is all, when you really start to look at it, it's all BS. It's not real, and because you could say anything you want online, but you can't verify or validate it, right? And I kept saying that you're listening to garbage. You're listening to a story that was in Entrepreneur Magazine where they're trying to get clicks and views. It's bullshit. It's not a real story. That
Mhm.
company doesn't exist. That person doesn't exist. So don't, you're getting blindsided, because all these guys thought that they could put together a 10-page deck on their product, walk into a meeting with all these investors, walk out with a check for, $5 million and get going. And it just doesn't work that way. And so, in the 5 years we've had on, somewhere in the neighborhood of 220 uh, entrepreneurs, people that have scaled businesses, people that have grown. Not one of them said, "Oh yeah, it was a hockey stick."
Yeah,
I
this was
started, I
so
opened up
easy.
the
Yeah.
door, and the next thing you know, I was a millionaire. It just doesn't work that way. And we've had some, some big businesses on, guys that
Yeah.
built. Art of Shaving that got bought by Gillette, guys that built, pet businesses that got bought by Mars. And, so nobody's ever said it. And like you said, it is painful. I mean, I've done it. My first business was a total disaster, and I learned from it. It was my own fault. It was just a lack of leadership and a lack of process management. But I went on over the years, and I founded, 10 businesses. 4 were successful and exited. The other 6 were disasters. And people could say, "Oh, well, you learned from them." Yeah, yeah, they were expensive learning tools, but it was every time that I got into trouble, it was because I lost sight of the fundamental. And it all had to do with I felt like, well, I know how to market, so I can do anything, and you can't. I was in businesses that I shouldn't have been in. Fashion. I don't know anything about fashion. I don't know anything about the customer in fashion. I could barely dress myself, but for some reason, I thought I'll get
You're
it.
matching the background right now. You look pretty good.
Yeah. So it's every time I've done it, I've sort of lost sight of the fundamentals. But it's never, even the successful ones have never been easy. I mean, they were not successful right out of the gate. They took
Mm.
work. We've pivoted. We hit walls. We hit times when we were running out of money. I mean, it was, and I know that you've bootstrapped this entire thing, and I'm always a big fan of bootstrapping, and we've gone as far as we could in some of our businesses. But at some point, we needed capital, and we wound up
Mm.
having investors, whether those were strategic investors or private equity or whatever. We've raised significant money over the years, but we did it at a point where after we had product market fit, after we were rolling, so that we knew if we took that money in, it was to scale. It was going to get us from 10 million to 50 million or whatever it was.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
the point you made is 100% correct. People watch these stories, and 90% of the time, those stories are absolute garbage. Absolute garbage.
I do think there's a related point that I feel myself, and yes, it is hard. It's harder than it's portrayed on YouTube or Instagram, of course. I think for me, what's also true is that what makes it hard is also what makes it fun.
Yep.
um, the problems are the challenge of it. The I'm not sure how to solve this problem is what makes it more interesting day to day and more engaging than just a job where next year you'll do the same work that you did this year and you also did the same thing last year. Every day is a different challenge, and even in addition to that, it's kind of up to you to figure out what your problems even are. So there's an interesting shift in responsibility that you have where suddenly you're giving yourself your own missions and then you're trying to solve them even though they seem impossible, which is really hard. But also, I can attest myself, and I'm sure you feel the same, high highs, low lows. When you do see some success, the thrill of somehow making just something out of nothing feels it feels amazing. I remember the first customer that I ever got. I was jumping all over the house. It was incredible. There's no feeling
Yeah.
like it. So I do think there's an important, you know, we don't just want to say, hey man, this is really gonna be terrible, and if you think this is gonna be fun, it will be fun if you like that kind of challenge, that kind of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the number one reason when you ask entrepreneurs, the number one reason they started their business has nothing to do with money, has everything to do with freedom. And when they say freedom, to um, it's not the freedom to set your own schedule. It's not the freedom where I don't have to work. It's the freedom to make my own decisions and fail or succeed on my own terms. If I'm going
Mm,
to fail, I want it to be on my own terms. If I'm going to succeed, I want it to be on my own terms. Because when you work for somebody, you feel like you're a cog in a wheel. You're not making the decisions. Somebody's making a decision to take the business in a certain way. And if it fails, you're part of that failure, but you had nothing to really do with it. You're doing what you were told to do. So that's
mhm,
what the motivation is. And like you said, they to be able to figure out the solution, and nobody, and I made this mistake in my first business. Nobody can answer all the questions, but the beauty about being an entrepreneur and getting involved with some sort of an entrepreneurial community whether that's an incubator, an accelerator, EO, something like that. We have a community. Is to be able to find people who have hit the same problem and listen to how they've overcome it. They're not telling you how to overcome it. They're telling you how they overcame it to spark the idea in your head, because everybody's business, everybody is different. But what we try and do, and I coach as well. I coach entrepreneurs as well. And what we try and do is keep you motivated to stay in the game, because too many times, people hit that wall where it gets hard, and they don't want to continue. They don't feel like they can continue when you can, because maybe by continuing, getting over that one hump, that may be the downhill slide to success for a period
Mm. Yep. Gosh, we all want to get downhill.
of
Yeah. Product market fit.
I'm
Let's
still
get it. Let's
trying.
get it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, but it comes in waves, right? I mean, I know guys, and I've told this story on the show a couple of times. As a coach, we had a company that came to us on the agency side. The founder took it from 0 to 20 million, and he got stuck at 20 million for about 5 years. He just couldn't get past it. And they hired us because they thought they had an advertising and marketing problem. And when in talking to them, I said to myself, I don't think so. And I called him up after we had the initial conversation. I said, would you be willing to do a 2-day offsite with your team? And he agreed to do it, because I said, I think there's more going on here. We did a 2-day offsite, and within the first 2 hours, I figured out what his problem was. And a lot of times, you can scale, right? You can have product market fit. You can go from 0 to 10, 0 to 20. But what I've seen people do is they hit a wall. Entrepreneurs hit a wall. And a lot of times it's because the founder, and I've been guilty of this myself, the founder doesn't want to let go and feels like, he hasn't built that team that can get him from 20 to 50. So he's still got this same team that got him from 0 to 20, but it may not be the best team to get him from 20 to 50. And he doesn't want to let go. And he's also trying to make all the big decisions. And you can't do that. When you get to a certain point, you have to start thinking about how I'm going to manage the business, not work in the business. Not, I'm here to manage finance and marketing, operations, warehousing, whatever it is. I can't be bothered trying to come in every day and work on some project, right? I have to be the bigger picture at this point. And that's a difficult thing for entrepreneurs to let go of. I mean, Larry Ellison almost lost Oracle in the early 90s because of that, because he had a team that got him from, I think it was 200 million, 0 to 200 million, and then they were stagnant, and he was having problems, nearly lost the business, and wind up having to redo his entire senior team because he just didn't have the right skill sets and the right people in the right places to get him further. And it happens, continually. So I'm a big believer in entrepreneurs, startup founders having a coach or having a community, because to talk about problems, to talk about where they are in business, because I've seen too many times businesses go and they get stuck. So,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Community is huge. It's a lonely road if you don't have other peers or other people that you can lean on or look to for just advice and commiseration. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I have one client. He's got a very successful business, and we talk every 2 weeks for an hour. And he has small agendas, but mostly it's just to talk about things that he's going through, and see, it's almost therapeutic for him, to be honest. But
Yeah.
it's easy for me to say, yeah, I've been there, and this is what I did, and let me put you in touch with, and I'll put him in touch with 10 other people that that he can talk to about his various problems, and it's great, because you
Yep.
do need that. It is a lonely road sometimes, but a lot of times, and again, I've been guilty of this. Entrepreneurs don't want to feel like they don't have the answer. They want to feel like they can do it all, and you can't. You can't do it all. You can't do it all by yourself. You don't have all the answers. You don't want to have all the answers, and
Yeah.
so yeah,
I think I remember when I was getting started, because I mean, there's you have different questions at different points along the way,
sure,
and Percy is still very early in its development, and I I think I remember being very just hey, what are stock options? What, just the most basic stuff. And the first place that I go is the internet, which can be a really bad place to get information if you're just looking for random stuff. Um, but one thing I remember learning early on was, just like you get information from a coach or a community or something. I mean, I think a lot of people look to the internet as well for advice and guidance, and um, it's really hard to know who you should listen to for advice on startup or business stuff, because everyone, like, you can go watch a Sam Altman lecture about how to start a startup. Are you trying to raise $20 million and become a $10 billion company? Great. Sam Altman is an authority on that stuff. Are you trying to bootstrap a lifestyle business to give you freedom to yacht around the world and work 10 hours a week? That's a very different kind of business you're starting.
Sure.
And it's and if you don't really know who you're listening to and who they're talking to, it can be hard to know which kind of information really applies to me or what I want to do. Um, so like I ended up kind of needing to develop some filters about who should I really be listening to here? Who are my actual role models versus the people who are just putting themselves in front of the internet and telling everyone they're the role model. Just in the same way that you can go on Instagram and find some guru who says, "I'm going to show you how to get rich." Is that your role model? Like, you need to really pick and choose your information diet pretty carefully about what seems credible and who they seem to be targeting with that. And I think the same goes for a community or advisor or coach. I think there's a lot of, I mean, gosh, I had lots of calls with prospects who would say, "Oh, I love advising startups. Why don't I advise you?" And you sort of have to go, "Well, have you ever started a company before?" I mean, there's lots of kind of tendrils will come out of the ground and start to attach to you, because they want to help, and it's really well meaning, but at the same time, you need to guard the things you're watching. And you need to be careful about who you're learning from. There was this famous Buddhist quote that said, "Be careful who you choose as your, like, Zen master, because you're gonna become exactly like them."
Yeah.
Uh,
No,
so,
that's an excellent point. You know, that frustration. Well, I had that frustration um, because I still join communities, and I join them because I want to stay on top of what's happening in the world, right? I still am involved in the startup world because I love to listen to what guys are doing. I love to
mm,
offer whatever kind of advice I can. I have a very good network. So if I run into problems, something that's out of my, jurisdiction, I can call somebody and say, "Hey, talk to this person." But, and I was having this discussion with a friend of mine about 6 months ago before we started ours, because I felt like I would join these communities and they were, yeah, we meet every Tuesday and every Friday and we have these focused things, these focused speakers and, yada, yada. And, and EO, I was in EO for many years, YEO, whatever. And, and all of a sudden I felt like every time I go to these meetings, I'm being pitched. Some guy's pitching me. He's not giving me information. He's trying to tell me, he's trying to build his credibility as a coach. And I'm sitting there going, dude, you don't have any experience. I've failed 6 times, succeeded 4 times. And you're telling me that you have built 30 business. I was on, this is the thing that blew my head. This guy was on 30, he told me he did 30 startups, had 30 exits. And I said, and I'm on this call and my head is exploding. I have a hard time holding back my feelings. And I finally said, if you're 50, that means that you exited at least one a year since you were 20. I said, it's physically impossible. I said, I did 10. I said, and 6 of them were failures. They didn't last very long, a year, maybe 18 months. The 4 that weren't, my head was in that game the entire time. You did 30. I said, I'm calling bullshit right now. Show me the 30. If you did 30 startups and you exited 30 startups, I should be able to Google you and find those. I said, because if you Google me, You can find every single one of my startups, every single one of my failures. You can see them all. It's right there. I said, I've
Mm.
written books about it. I said, you come on here and you're telling me you did 30 startups. And I got off the call because I was losing it. I said, that's it. And I exited the group because I said, if this is who you're bringing in and you're telling me that you're bringing in experts and you got a guy who's telling me he's done 30 startups, I said, put this into perspective, right? L. Catterton, it's the largest consumer product private equity group in the world, right? Since 1988, its founding, they have exited 64 companies since 1988. It's the biggest. They manage, several $100 billion, and this guy outperformed them. Come on, come on. I just so to me, what you're saying, you're more mild mannered than me. I am not mild mannered. And so to me, I call BS BS. And that was one of the biggest reasons we started our group to say, look, we're not gonna lie to you. We're gonna have people on. They're not gonna sell it to you. They're not gonna pitch to you. They're gonna give you advice. We're gonna do Tuesday. You'll get an email this week. We have a speaker who's gonna talk about branding. Because we're big in branding. Everything, to me, everything can be branded. When you build a brand, you're building a connection, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a SaaS product, whether it's a consumer product. So branding to me is one of the most important things in business because it adds value and separates you and sets you apart. But if you're just going to tell me bull, I don't have the stomach for it. I just don't. So
Yeah, and I think it's just a fact of life that there's always going to be people who are trying to angle and sell something, and this is true even not in business, just in life.
oh
You
yeah.
need to be critical about who where am I getting information from, who am I listening to, do I think that this is legit or not. And sometimes it might not even be that someone's a charlatan. They might just not be talking to you. Y Combinator is talking to people who want to grow trillion-dollar companies. I'm not trying to grow a trillion-dollar company. Should I listen to what Y Combinator says? Maybe, maybe not.
Well, I think the way I approach it, I'll talk to anybody because I think that there's value somewhere in any conversation I can have with somebody. Maybe I'm not the right person, but there's value. I think I see a lot of value in YC in the process, whether or not yes, I understand, they're trying to get people on the track to go and raise money to start building the next Uber, the next, whatever. But I've had
Yep.
a couple of friends that did YC and one was a men's scent company, like they did laundry detergent and men's scents, and they got through it and they learned a lot of things. I think the beauty of YC is the connections that you make. It's like a friend of mine told me, I have an MBA from University of Maryland, but I have a friend who went to Harvard, and he said, it's not about learning. You don't go to Harvard MBA to learn. You go there for the connections that you make. He said, because those connections can lead you down a path and help you along the way. Even if, you just want to build, like you said, a lifestyle business, whatever you're trying to do. So to me, I try and talk to a lot of people because I think that's why I love doing this show because of that. I love talking to people and I love hearing what they have to say. And I think you can learn from it. But yeah, you do have to have a good BS meter to get rid of the stuff, the people that don't have your best interests in mind, that are trying to just sell you on something.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're a lot more mild mannered than I
Maybe, maybe not. Who knows? Yeah.
am. No, I could tell you're more even keeled. Me, I'm Italian, first of all, so I'm always moving. I'm always moving my hands, and
Mhm.
but I don't have a high tolerance for um, outright BS because it doesn't do any good. Like if everything you do is successful, like I fail every day at something. There's small things, things I fail at them every single day, and I learn from it every single day. And I think that I am totally transparent about the problems I faced in building businesses, the things I did wrong, where my failures were, why they were failures, and I don't mind talking about them with people. I don't think it's a negative on me, and I love people who are transparent that say that. But when you come to me and tell me that everything you've ever touched is successful, uh, I just don't have. It's impossible. It's against the odds. You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
you know, we fail every day at building ads. We go, oh, that didn't work. No.
Yeah, I mean, um, I think to your point about, I mean, you made a point earlier that was sort of about, oh, I want to, um, I don't want to be lashed to the boat of a captain who I don't know if they're doing the right thing. I think that's one of the fun things about starting a business or doing your own business is that you own the failures, but at the same time, when it makes the success all the sweeter, I think.
No question. It's yours. It's yours. You own
Yeah,
it. Nobody can take it away from you. When you succeed, it's your success. You can feel good about it.
yeah,
You and your team, and you put together the team. So therefore, it's all on you.
mhm.
And you know, um, but I was at an investor conference a while ago because I was speaking about raising capital because I have different opinions about raising capital, structured capital for people. I'm a big fan of bootstrapping. I've been on the other end of raising capital from structured, and it's not pleasant. But I was there, and they were talking about two entrepreneurs. I did my spiel, and then I was listening to these private equity and VC guys talking about how they want 35% internal rate of return and why they want it. Now, I understand it makes sense from a business perspective. But the one thing that one guy said to me, or said to the group that stuck with me. He said, we would rather back an A team with a B product than a B team with an A product. He said, because we know that the A team can scale that business. Even if it's a B product, we can always fix the product. We can always work on fixing the product. But if you have an A team, you can always move it forward. If you have a B team and an A product, they're going to screw it up. So, and it stuck with me because, I think building a team sometimes is more difficult than actually starting the business.
Yeah, I could see that. I have certainly made not that many, people decisions, and some of them have been great, and some of them have totally flamed out, and it's a really difficult thing to do.
Hmm.
Yeah, I even my limited experience with it, it's very hard.
Yeah, trying to find the right people that are
But
going to go.
when you find the right person, it's like, wow.
Yeah, yeah. I never bought into the common saying that you should always hire people that are smarter than you, because then you just wind up with a bunch of smart people going in different directions with their own ideas. I think you have to find the right people that buy into the strategy of where you want to take it and can help you get there. They don't necessarily have to be smarter than you. They have different skill sets. You know, I'm very honest with my people when I hire them in the business. I am not good at the detail of, I can't sit down and write an ad. I can tell you the strategy of where the ad has to go, what has to happen. But if you're asking me to write it, we're going to fail. So
Mm,
I have to
yeah,
hire people that can do that. So
yeah, yeah. Um, I'm Percy's still at the point where it's a small team. We're not. There's no council of elders who are overseeing vast amounts of people yet, but somewhere in the future we'll be doing that sort of stuff. Yeah,
yeah, well, everybody gets there. You'll
yeah.
get there. Okay, we've got about 2 more minutes. Any any last minute advice for starting a business, obstacle overcoming, anything?
Starting
Any
a business. I
any sage advice?
um. This is gonna sound a bit weird, but like I think there's a lot of we live in a capitalist society, and I think we have lots of messages out there that entrepreneurship is the most heroic thing that any person can do, and you know we spontaneously generate fairy tales about our entrepreneurs are our heroes. And so I think sometimes it can almost seem like everyone, if you're not an entrepreneur, you're somehow not cool, or you haven't been, oh, what do you mean you just worked a job and then retired? And then I think there's this pressure where everyone feels like, well, that's the thing that's honored, and that's what has status, um, uh, and even entrepreneurship is sort of turned into about anything. Oh, you designed a T-shirt. You aren't like entrepreneurship is sort of almost becoming meaningless. I don't think it's as um, if you want to do it, that's great. You should do it, and it's a wonderful thing. But I do think that we should sort of put it in proper perspective of it's not if everyone's an entrepreneur, no one's an employee. Like no one can
Right.
work for anyone else. Like we need people who don't want to become entrepreneurs so that we can have companies and do stuff. But I do think if you do want to do it, my personal feeling is I remember when I first got the glimmers of feeling like I wanted to do something. I didn't have a solid idea yet, but I remember this thought of just I think maybe I could do something. And it was a very tangible switch that sort of flipped and suddenly the idea of a career working in consulting or Deloitte or whatever suddenly just was not going to be enough for me. And then everything rolled from there. And because I had that real drive, I was willing to put up with all the tough parts and be patient with it, all that stuff. Um, and I think that's kind of important. If you do, want to try it, it's going to be hard, but it'll be worth it. But it's not something for everyone. It's not
Right.
like, you know,
I agree.
that's a rambling answer, but it's a really fun thing, and I love it. I wouldn't do anything else. Um, but it's good to be honest about what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've run out of time. And if you enjoyed this conversation with Britton, share it with a teammate who's trying to separate AI reality from AI theater. And also, we have many Amazon brand builders out there, and there's not a lot of products out there right now that are doing exactly what Perci AI is doing. So check it out, Perci.ai. If you're thinking about adopting, any kind of AI, prioritize reliability, clear workflows, measurable outcomes, and you can get in touch with Britton on LinkedIn. We'll have his link to both Percy AI and his LinkedIn in the description of the show. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next week.